Hello everyone, Gregg Braden here. Welcome to this week's edition of our questions and answers. I have two questions that I'm hoping to get to in this session. I'll do my best to be concise yet thorough. And without any more ado, I'm going to get right to them. They're both really, really good questions. The first one comes from Susan. Susan doesn't say where she's from. And she asks two questions actually, but it's the same question. She said, how do we prepare for global grieving? How can we prepare ourselves to deal with the situations and be supportive of other people? Boy, this is a really good question. And it is something that I'm absolutely amazed that the mainstream really isn't talking about very much. I have a lot of friends working in mental health fields. They are counselors, therapists of different kinds. And what they tell me is they say we have not even begun to go through the grieving process for the trauma that we have experienced collectively as a society, as a nation, as a planet, as well as individually. The grieving comes from so much loss. And we have all lost something. At the very least, since March of 2020, everyone on this planet has lost a way of life. To some degree, everyone has lost some freedom to some degree. And we're seeing this vary in societies and nations. On an individual level, we have seen our friends and our families lose their loved ones. Fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles. And even if that hasn't happened to you directly, many people have lost elements of their own health. They're still here, but they don't feel like they used to, and their health has taken a hit. Statistics are showing us that as a planet, we are more stressed than we have ever been in recorded human history since they've been keeping records of stress levels. And that stress is more than just anxiety. The stress, unresolved stress, actually leads to inflammation, and inflammation is the foundation for most of the disease, most of the conditions that steal from us the thing that we cherish the most, and that is life itself. Inflammation as a result of unresolved stress. So when we talk about how to deal with this, let me address this first on a biological level. What science now shows us is that every emotion that we have in our lives produces a chemistry in our bodies. That's no surprise. It makes sense intuitively. But it wasn't until Candace Pert, the author of the book Molecules of Emotion, Harvard-trained medical MD. She now has passed this world and is in another world. But when she wrote the book Molecules of Emotion, I had the honor, and I mentioned this in a previous Q&A, I had the honor of knowing her through a common publisher. Had some meals with her. We shared conferences together, and I had the opportunity to get to talk to her a little bit and to understand on a deep level what it is that she was saying. And the bottom line to what she was saying is that every emotion produces a chemistry in the body that now can be quantified through what are called neuropeptides. So the neuropeptides are there from the greatest of joys to the deepest of sorrows, and what a neuropeptide wants to do is to metabolize through the body and to be expelled in the ways that we expel things through breath, the vapor in the breath, through tears, through mucus, through saliva, through urine, through feces, all of these things. As I mentioned in the previous program, when we have the tools to deal with our emotions, and specifically negative or difficult emotions or trauma. When we don't have the tools, that trauma, those chemicals can remain locked up in our bodies in ways that we're only really beginning to understand. It can be stored in the organs and tissues that we associate with the hurt and with the trauma. I say this now as a little summary, in case you didn't see the previous video, because we all have experienced some level of trauma in our loss. Some of it is greater than others. Some people have had multiple, I can imagine, the loss of multiple family members and the trauma that comes from that. As a society, we typically don't teach ourselves to grieve in a way has any structure. And what my mental health expert friends are telling me is that the initial trauma, the stress, is present now and people are dealing with it. But the post-stress trauma, the unresolved trauma that's locked in our bodies, hasn't even started to show up yet. And that we have the opportunity to head off the health crisis that can come from this by doing precisely what Susan is recommending here, as individuals, as families, as communities, as a society, as a nation, as a planet, allowing ourselves the opportunity to grieve. And once again, when I say to grief, it doesn't have to be a huge display, of emotion. It may if that's useful, but it can be as simple as acknowledging what we've lost and how we feel about what we've lost to a witness. Having someone witness us in our grief where we can share without feeling judged. So an objective witness. And this is a lot of what mental health experts do. They simply listen and allow us to share our experience without having criticism, without having doubt, without being ridiculed, for what it is that we've experienced. This is especially important for men. Men largely in the past have been taught not to grieve. The grief and resilience was essentially suck it up and get over it. And I come from that culture. Back in 1950s, 1960s, when I was a kid, we didn't have grief counseling. Certainly not the way we have it now. So it is an opportunity that we can be present for one another, and we're learning the skills. And through organizations like the Institute of Heart Math, learning to listen to another person through heart intelligence rather than through the mind. Because once again, when you listen to someone else in a conversation through the mind and through your brain is a polarity organ, left and right brain. And typically we are formulating a response to what the other person is saying before they even finish saying it. And we're doing it through the loop of consciousness in the ego loop that is looking at polarity, right, wrong, good, bad, success, failure, worthy, not worthy. We know all those. When you listen through your heart, and this is a skill that can be learned, it can be developed, it can be honed, you can get really, really good at this. And if you go to the Heart Math website or you come to my programs, we do this in some of the programs, the new event's called Pure Human. We will have a module based upon this because I think it's so vital. It's a vital skill that I think we all need, just like learning basic first aid to stop the bleeding or to clean an infection. I think we all need to be able to listen objectively to those that are close to us, to witness without judgment the hurt, the suffering, the pain, and the trauma that they're experiencing that they may not even be able to admit to themselves until they do it in the presence of another person. So how do we prepare for global grieving? I think as individuals, one of the most foundational things is to get as healthy as possible, because grief requires the systems of the body to all the systems of the body to be a part of the grief. And if you're already taking a hit in your health from another issue that was never resolved, then the grief may hit you even to a deeper level. It may be more difficult to process. So the best thing for any of us, just in general, even if we weren't in grief, the best thing is to be as healthy as possible. And that includes all the things that you know about: diet, certainly nutrition, exercise, supplements, sleep. And I've talked to more people that are having a hard time with sleep, inconsistent sleep. There's a term called sleep hygiene. And I think sleep hygiene is something that all of us have the opportunity to work on now, to do our very best to get optimum sleep, because this is when the body does so much of the rebuilding and the rejuvenation. So this is what we do for ourselves. How can we prepare ourselves to be present for others in a healthy way? And I think the answer to that is to take care of ourselves and be the best version of ourselves. And that is where the workshop begins. So I hope this helps to answer a little bit about the question. Susan, it's an awesome question. Thank you for mentioning it. Thank you for asking. And I wish more people were asking, or maybe they are and they're just not asking out loud. Or maybe I have, through Susan reflecting your question, put into words something that many people are feeling and they haven't really verbalized, or maybe they're not in an environment where they feel comfortable verbalizing it. Grief is healthy. We all will lose the things that we love and hold most dear and cherish in our lives. That's a promise. We will all lose those. And as we live longer lives, we will lose more and more, including entire ways of living. So, because grief is such a natural part of our lives, it makes tremendous sense for us to become adept and skilled at preparing ourselves for our own grief, acknowledging our own grief, as well as being present for those that we love and care for. So I hope that answers the question on grief. That's the first question. The second question, it's a different question. It may tie into the first question, but it's a question about good and evil. And this is a question from Marion. Marion asks, how can we as average individuals address the evil that is so blatant in the world? It's a big question. And I don't know that I can even do it justice in the few moments that we have here, but I'm going to do my very, very best. From my personal experience, we do live in a world of good and evil. I have witnessed evil on a personal level. I have battled evil on a personal level. I have emotionally, as well as psychically, as well as physically, engaged in battle with individuals that I can see as nothing else other than evil. The key in engaging with evil, as it is part of our experience, is to be able to engage, and this is going to sound maybe a little strange until we flesh it out, is to recognize the evil without judging the evil. We can discern that something is evil. But the moment that we judge the evil, we actually fall into the ancient trap that keeps us locked into the perpetual system of good and evil. The only way out of that ancient trap is to transcend the judgment. Discernment helps us to do that. We can discern that something is good or bad. We can discern that something's not good for us. I've been in business meetings before where someone in that meeting was filled with so much hate. That hate was being expressed verbally and it was being directed to me. And I had to say to myself, first of all, I have to be honest with myself. I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist, and I'm also a realist. So realistically, I'm saying, am I in the presence of hate? And intuitively, the answer is, yeah, there's definitely some hate coming from across that room. If I respond with that hate, I become part of this ancient system, this trap, because we live in a world of polarity. We have to have polarity on earth. If we didn't have polarity on earth, we'd be in heaven. Heaven is the absence of the polarities, of the absence of the darkness and the fear and the evil. But we live in a world of darkness and fear and evil, as well as good and beauty and light and love. And I cannot help but believe that a big part of the reason that we are in this world, and I personally believe that we're here by choice. I cannot prove that scientifically. I'm a scientist. I cannot prove that scientifically. I believe the evidence supports it, but I can't prove it. But I think the reason that we're here is to live in the polarity without getting lost in the polarity. To live in the polarity and choose to transcend the polarity from within the polarity. Do you know what a powerful being it takes to do that? What a powerful being it takes to live in a world where everything that we've known in the past is uncertain and it's unstable, and there's a new world emerging, but it's not here yet. We're in the place in between. We're trying to stay healthy. We're trying to have some kind of an intimate romantic relationship with a partner if we choose. We're trying to take care of our kids. We're trying to put food on the table. We're trying to build a career. We're trying to hold down a job and do all that without getting lost in the fear of not knowing what comes next. You know what a powerful being it takes to be in the place where you are right now, where I am. And I cannot help but believe that this is precisely why we're here. If you weren't up for what's happening right now, you wouldn't be here in this lifetime, or you wouldn't be able to sustain yourself in this lifetime. I want to tell you about a dream that I had back in the 1990s when I was struggling with this idea of good and evil. And it may help you to make sense of this as well. Now, I'll be brief on the dream. I was going through a difficult time in my life, and there were people that were evil in my life. And they were betraying me. One of them threatened my life. It's one of the few times that, as an adult, that I've had another adult threaten to take me off this planet, and that was happening. And not surprisingly, I began having a dream. I'm a very visual person, and I typically remember a lot of my dreams. They're really, really significant ones. The thing about this dream is that it was a recurring dream. The same thing was happening again and again and again. And now I know it was to give me the opportunity to make a new choice in the dream so that the dream would turn out differently. So here's the dream. In this dream, I'd find myself, I'd start to drift off to sleep at night, and I'd be in a dark place all by myself. And way off in the distance, I could see way far away everyone that I would ever love or care about in my life, people that I'd already known, people that my family, my friends, partners, and there were people that I'd never recognized, that I hadn't seen yet, but they were all over there. And I was taught, I was raised in a very conservative Midwest community back in the 1950s and 60s. You know, it was a different world. And I was taught to judge darkness and to always go to the light. And I had friends that did the same thing. I had friends that always said, I only hang around with people who are of the light. I won't hang around with somebody in the darkness. And I would ask them, I'd say, where do you draw the line between the light and the dark? I mean, you can see the extremes, but where do you draw that line? And here's the reason I ask. Because the moment you draw that line, you are stuck in the trap that keeps us in this perpetual battle between light and dark. So I would ask them, where do you draw that line? So here's in my dream. Every time I would start to walk from the darkness toward the people that I could see way off in the distance, the darkness was on one side of my path and the light was on the other. And they would both be pulling at me. And every time I gave in to the light, because I was conditioned, it's all about the light, all about the light, all about the light. That light, only in the light, would pull me off the path. I couldn't go anywhere because I was stuck in the light. This happened time and time again. One night, something changed. And I cannot tell you that I consciously had this awareness in my waking life. I can tell you that I recognized it in my dream, and once I recognized it in the dream, I began to live it in my waking life. This is a very powerful dream. Here's what happened. The dream started just like it always starts. I was alone in the dark, everyone I loved way far away, and I started walking toward them. But this time, for some reason, when the darkness pulled me on one side and the light pulled me on the other, I didn't go to either one. I didn't go to the light. I didn't judge the darkness. I didn't judge the light. I didn't say the light was good or bad. I didn't say the dark was good or bad. I said they are both present in my life. And the moment I did that, the moment I acknowledged and allowed for both of them in my life, they came together and became the road that carried me to everyone that I would ever know or love in this dream. It was the absence of the judgment. It wasn't condoning, and I want to be really clear about this. It doesn't mean that you condone or you accept or you embrace darkness, but you discern and you acknowledge that it exists because that is part of the world that we live in. And the moment I did that, it became the path that carried me to my loved ones. And I woke up that morning and I thought, wow, what a powerful, beautiful dream. And I began exploring how to apply that in my life. I think Buckminster Fuller maybe said this best. He said, you know, you're never going to change the world by fighting the things that you don't like. He said, you want to change the world, build a new model that works better than the old model, and follow the new model, and the old model becomes obsolete. That thinking, I believe, applies to light and dark. Now, I acknowledge that there are times that we must fight darkness. And I have an inner warrior, just like all of you. Uh, it's there when I need it. And I'm happy it's there. And I've honed and developed my inner warrior emotionally, psychically, psychologically, morally, spiritually, and I've honed my warrior on a physical level as well. And I'm happy with all that. It's not the focus of my life. It's there if I ever need it. But more often than not, when I recognize that that darkness exists without judging that darkness, and that's a powerful thing to do, then it will serve me rather than enslave me. Now, there are belief systems in the world right now that are pulling at me and pulling at you, and we all know what they are, that tell us we are only good people if we judge, and if we judge something that does not look like we want it to look. You know what I'm saying here, and I have to be careful what I'm saying because I want to stay on the platform here. So there are belief systems out there that tell us that if we are good people, that we have to judge. I personally have found that that doesn't work in my life. So I personally cannot subscribe to those belief systems, although I have friends and family that do, and I love them. But forgiveness, I think, forgiveness is a powerful part of dealing in a polarity world. Discernment is a powerful part. Choice is a powerful part. Recognizing that there is good and evil, but choosing the path that most identifies with what your values are in life. And I think this is what we do. And I know this may not be the answer that Marian is looking for, or maybe it helps. I don't know. As average individuals, this is the question she asks, as average individuals, how do we address this evil? I'm going to come at this from another way as well. Many of you know I am closely affiliated with the Institute of Heart Math. I'm not their employee. I've worked with them since the year of their inception. We're over 31, 32 years now. And they have taught me so much, and I owe them so much gratitude. I feel so much gratitude for the opportunity to work and share and grow with them, as well as the friendships and the camaraderie that's come from that. One of the projects that HeartMath has headed up, that for transparency, I'm on the steering committee, is called Global Coherence Initiative, GCI. It is the exploration of our relationship to the field, the magnetic field of the Earth. So as a geologist, I love this. That connects all life. And the bottom line is that we now know that the field that connects us, it only knows coherence or it knows chaos. It doesn't make excuses for why the chaos is there. So I'm saying this, when we see evil, and if we go out and we're rioting in the streets and overturning police cars and lighting buildings on fire and taking down the businesses of our neighbors because we don't like the evil that's out there, I understand the thinking. I know where the intent. But the reality is we're either feeding the coherence or we're feeding the chaos. And when we are angry and hateful, and we express that in our lives, we're contributing to the chaos, the very chaos that's creating the world that we're hoping to change. And I say this because a lot of you have written to me, and they're saying, Greg, how come you didn't why don't you support our cause? Why aren't you out there protesting? Why aren't you out there, fighting for the things that you believe in? And I am, just not the way necessarily that you may expect. Because when we are angry, you have to ask yourself, what are you feeding the field? When we are angry, we're feeding the field the chaos. We're contributing to the chaos. We're creating more chaos. And we're stuck in the ancient trap that keeps us locked into this cycle of good and evil and right and wrong. And there is good and evil, and there is right and wrong. And how we address that is where our spiritual growth happens by leaps and bounds. Because it is such a powerful place to discern evil without judging it. And I don't know how that falls on what you're hearing right now. And I know there's some belief systems that will push back on what I've said. All I can share with you is my experience. And this is my experience. I feel like I've been training all my life for the evil that exists in this world right now. It's out there and it's up for us. We can't ignore it, but it can only exist if we empower it. And I think by choosing love and by choosing to respond without hate and judgment, that is a weapon that defeats that evil in ways that we're only beginning to understand. So it's a deep question, and I'm happy to go into more detail if you'd like that, if you want to leave it in the comments. I wanted to keep this to a reasonable time, so I'm going to stop right there, and I'll close this session of the Q&A. I want to thank you for your questions. Keep them coming in, and I'll do my very best. What I typically do is when I see a number of questions, different questions asking the same question, I will put them together into conversations like we're having right now. So thank you all for this session of our Q&A this week. Have a beautiful rest of the week. I look forward to our next.